Okay, so this is India Simmons
All right.
interviewing Mr. Wesley Owens on March 4th, 2019 in
Yes.
Mr. Owens' residence.
Right.
So, Mr. Owens, why don't you start off by telling us when and where were you born?
I was born in Austin, Texas, and you want to know when?
Up to you.
1951.
Wonderful. And will you tell us a bit about your neighborhood growing up?
I'm the son of a United Methodist preacher, so we moved around, and we were a part of the old West Texas Annual Conference. And so after being born in Austin, he was transferred to Fort Worth as a district superintendent of the Dallas-Fort Worth district. We stayed there for a number of years, went to nursery there in the first grade. Then we moved to Dallas. And that's where I spent not only the rest of my elementary years, but also my junior high, high school, and college years.
Wonderful. And will you tell us a bit more about your family?
Well, my mother was a school teacher. My dad was a college professor at times and a United Methodist minister. He taught at Wiley College to supplement income during the summer, and was a full-time United Methodist minister. My mother was a first grade school teacher. I had a great childhood, grew up in an all-black neighborhood with the full array of people, from maids all the way up to doctors and lawyers and everybody in between. A close-knit neighborhood where if you got out of line, someone would say to you, "Owens, you know who you are. You're not that kind of person." Or, "I'm going to tell your daddy and mama on you." I was not I was kind of I wouldn't say a people pleaser as a child, but my father was my hero, and as well as my mother, and I wanted to please them. So I wanted to get good grades. That was expected. And my sisters, I have two older sisters, and they were basically the same way. I'm the youngest and the only son. But most people say, "Well, you were spoiled," but I really wasn't. The way I was raised to really take care of my older sisters. So when my parents were out of town, I had to be at home to take care of them. So I had a great childhood, very supportive neighborhood, lots of friends in the neighborhood, played games, enjoyed school. Church was where my father pastored for 13 years in our neighborhood in Dallas. The church life was an extension of the community life, the school life. The doctor that doctored us lived in the community. So the barber that cut our hair lived in the community. It was an ideal life.
And what did a normal day at home look like growing up?
In terms of what? Well, as I described, parents worked hard, had high expectations of us all. We had, I wouldn't consider us poor. We were not rich. We didn't want for anything, but we had all the clothing and toys and things that we needed. And so it was a fun time. A lot of times on the weekend, my dad always raised cattle also. I'm the fifth generation on a farm that we own. And so on the weekends, he typically took me to the farm with him. So there were family members down there. So we interacted with them. And again, a very close-knit, very pleasant childhood experience, in summary.
And during Dallas at the time, how would you describe race relations?
It was segregated. You know, I went to an all-black elementary school, an all-black high school, but I did not see racial tension. I guess we kind of knew where our place. We were somewhat self-contained. The grocery store was in the neighborhood. There was a black-owned grocery store in South Dallas, Leo's grocery store that we went to on the weekend. The theater was the Forest Avenue Theater that I would go to as a child. There were no whites, so it was not segregated. I understand in the earlier years, as the neighborhood transitioned, the blacks would sit in the balcony, but I never experienced that because when I got there, it was all black. So, and the few whites that I encountered were in connection with the church. The Methodist Church was segregated at the at the conference level, but integrated at the jurisdictional level. So I would sometimes accompany my father to those meetings at the jurisdictional level as a child. And so the whites that we interface with, I guess I would consider them liberal. I never saw the white robes, I don't ever recall hearing the N-word. It was all on television. The sit-ins, I never saw that. Again, we were kind of in a bubble. And when we traveled, we avoided those places. I do remember seeing colored signs, but we never went to places where we had to go in the back. We avoided them.
Okay.
Okay.
Will you tell us a bit more about high school for you?
Well, high school was great. Again, it was in our neighborhood, and I was very active in high school. You know, the principal of our high school went to our church. There were always high expectations of us. As a matter of fact, my oldest sister was salutatorian at that same high school. My sister was valedictorian of that high school, and I was salutatorian of the high school. And I played baseball for the high school. I was in the honor society and in the choir, in the various plays. The senior play, I was in that. Debate club, was in that. I had a very pleasant high school life. During our high school time, we did move out of the neighborhood to Oak Cliff in 1967. I finished in 1969. I was able, however, through some means, to go back to school. So I bused myself back to James Madison from Oak Cliff and finished there at James Madison before going to SMU.
I see. What were some of the dreams you held as a child?
Well, I'm going to tell you a joke. You know, someone asked me as a kid, I remember, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, I just want to be a hobo living in a shack and eat Post Toasties every day. I mean, so you can kind of sense where my mind was as a kid. I saw myself being a college professor later, as someone asked me what I would like to do. My dad was a teacher as well as a preacher, and my mother was as well. And so I saw myself being a college teacher, kind of following in my dad's footsteps. So that sounded like something great to do.
And what led you to SMU?
It was an accident. I was headed to Fisk University, and my dad got transferred from Dallas to the Austin district. And because we raised cattle, he said, you know, I really need you to stay. Would you consider applying to SMU? He mentioned SMU because in 1969, that was during the time of integration. He was an integrationist. The Methodist Church had integrated in 1968, and he said it would be a great opportunity for you to go to SMU. So being the obedient child that I was at that time, I applied to SMU and was accepted.
At the time, did SMU have any sort of reputation amongst the African American community?
Not that I knew of. Not that I was aware of at the time. Shortly after getting there, I had heard about Jerry Levias going there and being the first, I guess, African American in the Southwest Conference. I think so. But that's, again, I was just the typical freshman going to a new university. My dad had bought me several suits, and then I quickly realized that the suits were not something that folks wore in college at that time. The hippie movement was in full swing at that time.
And so what were your expectations coming into SMU?
You know, I was going to continue to do the things that I did in high school, perform well. It was expected of me to do well. I set goals. My goal was to have a well-rounded education and maintain at least a B average. I didn't have goals set to have straight A's, but I wanted to at least make what I called the honor roll every semester, which I was able to do. But I also wanted to have a social life. And so I quickly looked for venues in which to have a well-rounded social life.
So when you first arrived to the school, how welcoming was it?
Yeah, I was quickly approached by the Black Student Union. I don't know the official name of it. So I spent the initial months in that setting, mostly around Black students. But as I started attending school, classes rather, picked up friends in those classes. My roommate was white, and started hanging out with different groups until I found my way around to the friends that I kind of stuck with. But initially, I hung out exclusively with the Black students there.
Okay.
Because I could readily, coming from an all-Black environment, it was just kind of a natural kind of experience to be with them.
And during your time at SMU, did you live on campus?
Yes, I lived on campus the first year, and because my mother then followed my dad to Austin the next year, I moved back home and stayed and kept the family home and commuted.
Okay.
Because I was basically keeping the house here in Dallas,
Okay.
or there in Dallas.
And during your time, besides the Black Student Union, were you involved in any other clubs or sports?
I was, my sophomore year, I believe it was my sophomore year, or close, whenever we could pledge, I pledged Lambda Chi. So I was accepted into the Lambda Chi fraternity, where I was very active in intramurals, and the social life offered to me by that fraternity. The keg parties on Fridays, understood what the word TGIF meant. I didn't know it at the time. Thank God it's Friday. So spent a lot of time around that fraternity life. Later on, I got active in the accounting honors group, Beta Alpha Psi, so I became a member of that. And that's some time ago. It's been quite some years ago. Those are the kind of two things that kind of stand out. There were various black organization activities. I participated in those as well.
Okay. Were there any clubs or sports that you felt at the time that maybe you shouldn't have gone towards?
Well, there was some fraternities that did not pledge African Americans. And there was one with a Confederate flag flying. I knew that I had no business being associated with that. Which could not be. I don't know what their positions, is right now, but I didn't. You kind of Lambda Chi and I think the ATOs openly recruited African Americans and other minorities, and so that's where I found a place in Lambda Chi. Really enjoyed the brotherhood of that association.
And what was your social life like?
I had a great social life. I really felt when I went to college, coming from James Madison, coming from the environment with the teachers in the community, I didn't feel inferior. And I do remember a college teacher in one of my classes wanting me to talk about the black experience, kind of like this interview, but in class. And I remember saying this, because I was a lot more outspoken then than I am now. And I said in the class, before I talked about the quote, black experience, I said, I didn't know I was supposed to be inferior until I came to SMU, because I didn't feel it. And so socially, I felt like there were no barriers. Whatever I wanted to do, I did it. I had heard stories that you could not jog in Highland Park. Well, I was an avid jogger at the time. I jogged in Highland Park. And believe it or not, I never got stopped. And someone said, well, they keep a list of all the black. I said, well, I don't know about that, but I never got stopped. Okay. I never got stopped. So some people would say, well, Wesley, you were naive. I just think that it's how you see yourself. And I just didn't see myself as limited. And so I ventured out. And again, it was the time when there was the hippie movement going on. It was more of an inclusive period, I believe, when I was at SMU.
Okay.
So I dated across racial lines, and did not feel restricted. However, I do recall something just came to mind. At one of the fraternity parties, I happened to be with someone white in the car with me, a young lady, and there was an elderly couple on Preston that stopped the car and shook their head at me. But again, I kind of looked through those things, because for every potential negative, or what I could read as a negative experience, there were other positive, so many more positive experiences.
Now, can you walk me through a typical day as a student here?
Well, okay, as a freshman, when I stayed in Morrison Hall, the typical day was, I tried to have morning classes so I could have afternoons off. And so the typical day was get up early. We had to take swimming. And so because I didn't swim well, I would go to the natatorium, which at that time was right by the dorm. And so I would swim in the morning. And then because it was open very early. And then I would go to breakfast and eat a hearty breakfast. And then classes would start about 9. And I tried to get all my classes in so that I could have the afternoons off. So typically in the afternoons, I wanted to study. So I would go to the library because it was always quiet. And then in the evenings, well, I would have lunch. And then in the evenings, I would get with friends and we would either eat in the cafeteria or we would go off campus and eat across the street at the Dairy Queen. Or if we wanted barbecue, there's a black community by Love Field, and we would go there. I had a car on campus, so I was quite mobile, and so I would go to the stores, go to the library, go out to eat. And usually would get back to the dorm late and start the routine over. On the weekends, friends, we would go visit other campuses. We would go to North Texas, some other campus, Texas Women, to date. It's a little foggy, but that's kind of it. Study was a big part of my day, 3 or 4 hours a day. Typically. I took Fridays off. Fridays were time to chill out and just do what I wanted to do.
What would you say was your most memorable experience here at SMU?
Oh, well, let's see. Academically, I enjoyed my accounting classes. I had a great professor who really encouraged me to become a CPA. I didn't know what a CPA was. I didn't know any. At that time, it was probably 1970 when I started taking accounting classes my sophomore year. My professor, Dr. Carey, came up to me and said, young man, you can become a CPA, and began to mentor me in that direction, as well as some of the other professors. Typically in my class, I was the only African American. And I guess because they saw a desire to learn, Dr. Carey and I can't remember the other professors, would encourage me even after class. One professor even gave me a set of books, the CPA review booklets, questions from past exams. So that's quite memorable. My time with Lambda Chi and intramurals, because it was a big production. The intramural life at SMU was also a memory because we had a lot of success. And then the time I spent with friends. I had a lot of friends hanging out in their dorm room, the parties that we attended. Those are some of the things I think about. Graduating, and I stayed another year to get my MBA there. So the MBA classes, because I had really kind of got in stride with studying and how to do it, I had met my wife at that time, who came to SMU while I was there. So, dating her, becoming exclusive with her during those years, most memorable. We also got married on campus. The week after I finished graduate school, we got married in the Alumni Center, and my dad presided over the wedding in the chapel.
That's really sweet.
That's what happened. Yeah, I thought I better pull that in. Yeah, I got married at SMU. Did not meet my wife at SMU. I met her, and then she came to SMU after I met her.
Wow. Now let's go back a little bit. Will you tell us about what did your friend group look like?
I had friends of all colors, I guess. Friends in the fraternity, which would be all white. And there were one or two African Americans in the fraternity. They were friends. The best man in my wedding was not in the fraternity, but also I knew him because his parents were big farmers, and he came to SMU, and so he was African American. So I had kind of the Rainbow Coalition. I had a variety of friends of all groups. There were not many Latinos on campus at the time, so I did not have any Latino friends, but certainly white as well as African American. So.
And you majored in accounting, correct?
I majored in accounting, yes.
Within that department, how did race relations manifest themselves?
Yeah, for the most part, I was well received. Now, there was one experience that I will note, and I won't state this professor's name, but I ended up doing quite well in the class. And this is kind of one of the stereotypes, I guess. It was in an intermediate accounting class. And the professor made this statement to the class, but he looked at me. And he said, I would advise you athletes, now I did not play sports at SMU, to get out of this class because I'm not going to give you any grades. And after hearing that and seeing that he was looking directly at me when he said it, he was talking to me. So after class, I went up to his desk and said, Dr. So-and-so, I'm Wesley. I'm here to learn, and I'm looking forward to being in your class, and I am not an athlete. He said nothing, but he graded the papers fairly. I believe in that class I earned a B. He was a tough professor, and I earned a B. Needless to say, I decided not to take him a second time. So that was my only experience in accounting. Now, I had a finance teacher. I will not name him, but I took Finance 1 and Finance 2, because he still may be living, and he may see this, and I no need of. One day in class, there was another African American in the class, and he said in class to me, "Where is that other colored boy that's in this class?" As if I kept up with him, and I said, "I don't know where he is." And then I had met my wife. That was probably my junior year when I was in the second finance class. And so I was walking down in the business school, Cox, that building. It was much smaller then. And so I was walking down the hallway, and he stopped me. I was with my girlfriend, now wife. And he said, "You need to hold on to him because he is a smart colored boy." Now, I took him both classes, 1 and 2, but I earned an A in his class. So grade-wise, he was fair. But he's not someone that I would ask that I hung out with. Now, there was something that I used to do at SMU that they had maids at the time, and I wasn't supposed to do this, but there was a faculty lounge. And so I would go to the faculty lounge, and I befriended the maid, and at that time, coffee was in the machine. But she allowed me to have coffee in the kitchen. Now, some of the faculty would be in there. They may have thought I was a relative or something, but I would go there, and that's a fond memory, by the way, because it's something about the faculty coffee and the coffee out of the machine was dramatically different. And when my wife came on board, she allowed her to go back there to get coffee too. So we got free coffee there in the faculty lounge. And people saw us back there, but they didn't care. I know, but we call ourselves sneaking back there. But we would walk straight through the lounge and go right to the kitchen, and she would give us, let us have coffee. And so we would get our coffee there, and that was a big thing to do at that time. So that's a fun memory. I forgot that one. I thought I better throw that back in.
In the business school, were there many other black students?
In the undergraduate school in accounting, there was one other individual. Ultimately, around my senior year, there may have been 3 or 4. But I would say, but they were in different classes. I never had an African American in any of my accounting courses. Of the 30 hours plus there, I don't recall any African Americans in those classes. But in finance, there were others. Business law, there may have been others. I was pretty focused when I was in class, but I would know who was there. And I didn't have study partners. I studied alone. That was kind of just the way using a slang, that's the way I rolled.
So overall, how well did you feel that the black community was represented at SMU?
It was not represented very well. Very few of us there. I mean, you know, if once you got beyond the core, the basic course, the freshman courses that everyone had to take, I very seldom saw blacks except in the student union, and I would say there were far less than 100. And by the time I was a senior, I was thinking before this interview, many of the folks I saw as freshmen, I never saw again. So I don't know if they finished from SMU or what. I would say I can remember 20 or 30 that I developed some relationship with, some friendship with.
What effect did the lack of representation in the faculty and student population have on you?
I don't think it had a profound impact on me at all. I knew why I was there, to get an education. And because I was mobile, I had a car. Later on, I had a pickup truck to take care of the farm. The lack of African American representation there, and I had great professors that I connected with, as I mentioned. I don't feel a sense of loss at all from my experiences, or the lack of other African Americans there, because I knew what I was there for, to get an education, to enjoy myself while I was there, and as long as I was able to do that, either on campus or off campus, then everything was fine, so far as I was concerned. So I don't feel deprived at all from that experience.
So overall, as a black man, how well did you feel that you were treated by other students and faculty members?
For the most part, well. For the most part, well. People treat you like you treat them. And I expected to be treated well, and I was respectful to others. I was a student. I was there to learn. I had a mission, and that was the focus.
And how did you feel about graduation?
Glad it was over. Both of them. The undergraduate thought it was too long, but it was over. The graduate school, because I knew that was the end, was very memorable. That was in the Fine Arts Theater. I think it was the Bob Hope. I don't know if it's still called that today. That's where the graduation was held. It was a more intimate group, so I knew everyone. I knew their faces. I didn't know them personally, everyone. So relieved, proud, glad it was over. Ready to start making a living, because I got married the next week. So I had to, my wife was still in school at the time, so I had to take care of her.
And as you reflect back on your time at SMU, how do you feel about it?
If I were to give it a grade of, I would give it an A minus. An A minus.
And how was your transition into professional life upon receiving your MBA?
Actually, my professional life started while at SMU, because at my sophomore year, I got a job in the accounting department where they allowed me to work based on my schedule. So I worked whenever I could work at Sun Oil Company. And when I finished my senior year, knowing that I had I was going to get an MBA, I got job offers for 1 year beyond from a CPA firm. And so I left graduate school and immediately got a position at Arthur Young. So job opportunity, as well as a job offer from Sun Oil Company where I worked while in college.
I see.
Part-time, very part-time. I also was the recipient of a SEDCO scholarship after my freshman year. Because I was so late enrolling at SMU, the first year my dad paid for. He didn't know how he was going to pay for the second year. The tuition was a lot cheaper then than it is today, of course. But through the dean of the business school, I applied for, he approached me, and I applied for a SEDCO scholarship, and I received a full ride from my sophomore year all the way through graduate school without student loan, based on academics, as long as I maintained a B average. So that goal, when as a freshman, of maintaining a B average really paid off. I didn't know that would result in a full ride. I just wanted to do well so my parents wouldn't be angry. So I have to mention the SEDCO scholarship through the SEDCO company. Very appreciative of that opportunity. And I think there were 60 of us on that scholarship. And it was based on academics only, and being a good citizen. Quote, a good citizen.
And what prompted you to stay in Dallas?
Jobs. I mean, why leave? Dallas is the place people come, and I'm already here, and I had numerous job offers, and so there was no need to leave.
And what lessons from your undergraduate career do you apply to your work now?
Set goals. I didn't articulate it as goals then, but setting goals is extremely important. You need to know where you're going. You need to have direction. And sometimes you allow yourself to be directed by others. You know, and I thank God that my father and mother gave me direction, and that that direction was in sync with a successful life. And so within those parameters that the directives that they set, I could set my own goals. So goal setting is extremely, you got to know the why you are there. And I think that's number one. And once you have the why, then that drives what you do to get what you need to get where you need to go.
And so since then, what does life look like for you now?
Well, I'm retired and had a long career in accounting, discovered that my gift wasn't really number crunching, so I moved into management and to administration. I did teach accounting at Bishop College in 1974 and in the community colleges. And so life today, was that the question? Life today is, I've done my work, I've finished my career. Now I'm working on the legacy, passing on to my sons the heritage from my father and mother, enjoying the farm that I have maintained, and hopefully passing it on to him. My wife and I, once she fully retires, she is semi-retired. We're here in Waxahachie. We love our church life. We're active in the church ministries. Didn't talk about that earlier, but you know, I've come full circle. I grew up in the church. While in college, I left the church, and after college, I've been making my way back to the church, and I'm now full circle back to the church. And so we're very active in marriage ministries. We have a marriage small group that meets right here in our home from our church. We also are marriage mentors. We've been married 44 years, together 47, dated for 3, married for 44. Life is good. Have 2 grown sons, 2 beautiful grandchildren that I don't see enough of.
Do you have any regrets at all?
No, I say that real quick. I don't have any regrets. Well, let's say, what would I do different? Instead of, I would have shot, because I would have maintained it. I should have said not a straight A, but an A minus instead of a B average. I would have set the bar a little higher for myself and worked toward that because I was capable of doing that. I just at the time wanted to make sure that was the floor so that I could have a well-rounded education. But other than, you know, setting the academic bar a little bit higher, I certainly wouldn't have changed going to SMU, because if it wasn't for SMU, I would have not met my wife. Because had I been off in Tennessee, chances are I would have never made it back to Dallas to meet my wife, who I met one summer after my sophomore year through a friend there in Dallas. So I could not change a thing.
Do you remain involved with SMU? Do you remain involved?
Yes,
with
we SMU was good to me, and their fundraising drives. Both my wife and I contribute annually to the SMU fund. Now, going back to alumni, we have not done that, but we support the school financially.
Do you keep in touch with any friends or mentors from SMU?
Very few. We were in different walks of life, different stages of life, family situations. The gentleman that people live in different cities now, a few, very few. We have kind of a new circle of friends through our church since we've been here in Waxahachie. There are one or two, though, that we do keep in touch with.
Well, Mr. Owens, is there anything at all you feel I may have missed which you would like to further discuss?
No, I don't think so. I wasn't, I had to think back on a lot of things. So, the questions were kind of cold. That's been some time ago. But I think in summation, I said the things that I recall that were true about my experiences at SMU. I know from talking to others, they have had different experiences, but on the whole, because of the kind of person that I am, my experiences were very good.
Well, that's wonderful to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of our project.
All right. Thank you.